All right. Welcome everybody to the fundamentals of 3D modeling for games. My name is Brad McLeod, and I'm going to be your instructor for this semester. I'm really super happy to be teaching all of you guys. We're going to have a lot of fun in this course. We're going to be using Maya in this course, Maya 2017. And I'm really excited to teach you about 3D modeling, and in specific 3D modeling in a games context. Um, so in this video here, this is the first week's video, and what we're going to do is we're just going to have a nice time exploring Maya and the user interface. Okay. So, some of you may have some 3D experience, some of you may not, all of you may have very little. There's always a mix in each class, and you know I like to err on the safe side when I'm teaching. So, if some of you are already good with Maya and you've used it and you know the user interface and the ins and outs of the software, great. But having said that, you might learn a few things if you just kind of follow along. And as I have been a student myself before, I think it's always a good idea to watch um, videos and learning material. Even though you may have learned a lot of things, there's always things to be learning. There's always new stuff to be learning. And I think you're going to find that in the industry as well. When you guys get out into the industry, you're also going to find that it's a constant learning experience. You never stop being a student. You really don't. I myself am still a student. I'm still learning. So if you think you know everything, um, you probably don't. I know I don't, and I'm always learning. So be patient and try to watch the videos because you might learn some extra stuff, and you might not. But it's always good to play it safe. So that's just a little tip. So okay, so let's get started. So up here we have, first thing I'd like you guys to take a look at is the main menu bar. So up in the main menu bar, you basically got everything that encompasses Maya's tools. Okay, so we have file, like most softwares. Okay, if anybody's, I'm pretty sure that most people in this class are going to be familiar with using computers, and with most computer software you have a main menu bar which has your file, edit. So in this case we have file where we can save things and export things. We have edit, we have create, select, modify, display, windows. So these are all a set of tools, okay, up on the main menu bar that you can reach any of Maya's functions from. Okay. Now the cool thing about this menu bar is that it actually changes when I come down here. I've got this menu bar. So like if I quickly go through, we have file, edit, create. So I can create things from here. Select, selecting, growing selections. You know, modifying objects so we can add attributes. We can center the pivot, freeze the transformations, and reset transformations and all this stuff. Display things, and we can get to the different windows of Maya. So the different editors from the Windows menu, we can go to the different editors, animation editors. We can edit meshes, and we can display normals and reverse and Hoffen. We can set smoothing groups, and then you have curves and surfaces and all that stuff. So this encompasses a lot of Maya's tools. But when I come over here, let's click over here. When I come over here to this tab, right now it's set to modeling. Okay. So if I go to rigging, you can see that the top bar here actually changes. So it shows me skeleton, skin, deform, constrain, control, cache. Okay, so all the rigging functions. Okay, so I can go to any one of these to animation, and it will give me category specific, or you could maybe even say department specific sets of tools. in the main menu bar. And that'll change as you go down the list. You have rendering, so it'll give you all the rendering tools and editors and things like that. Okay. So now over here, we have a set of buttons up here. Now I'm going to go through most of these. Some of them I don't really want you to pay too much attention to because I'm going to show you a way to get around a different way anyway. But if we go over here, we have new scene, open scene, save scene, undo the last action, and redo. And you know, we can select by objects and things like that. Okay. Now up here we can select by hierarchy and combinations. We can select the object type, and we can actually select components of an object. Okay. We have snap functions here. Okay. So if I want to snap to the grid, I can snap to a curve, I can snap to a point. So these are all my snapping functions, and I'll explain what snapping is in a little bit. And we also have a bunch of the rendering options beside that. Okay, so rendering and all that. So under rendering, we have open render view, render the current frame. We have IPR renderer, which is an auto viewport renderer, an auto update renderer, and then we have render settings and hypershade and so on and so forth. Okay, so those are the main ones that I'd like you to sort of just pay attention to. And then we come down here, we have buttons. Okay, so these are sort of a visual representation of the same thing that is in the menu. Okay, so it's a little bit redundant. You have curves, and so you can create curves and surfaces. You can create polygon objects and edit them. Okay, so there's a lot of your edit mesh tools. There's sculpting, rigging, animation. So each one of these tabs has a bunch of sort of visual aided buttons. It's just sort of like a more aesthetically pleasing way to access Maya's tools. Okay, so you can see animation user. Okay, so most of these are kind of redundant. Okay. So I'm going to move down here, and the next thing I'm going to come to is what we call the transform tools. Okay, so transform tools. So what is a transform? A transform is either moving an object through space, scaling an object, or rotating an object. Okay. So we have selection tools here. So we have the select tool, which is literally just, you know, I can select things. Okay, it is what it sounds like. I can use the lasso selection tool, and I can use paint selection. Okay, so I can paint a selection on an object if I have some faces I want to paint. And then we have the move tool, the rotate tool, and the scale tool, and I can click each one of these. Okay. And if I move down here, we've got different viewport settings. So what does this kind of describe? Well, if I click this first one, which is what I'm on, this gives me a maximized view of the perspective view. So this is the perspective view, and I can toggle around in my perspective view. If I click this panel layout button here, the one below it, it's going to give me my perspective view, my top view, my front view, and my side view. Okay, and this is good for when we want to have a nice sort of a nice mix of views. So say we're modeling an object and we want to see the sculpt here, but we need to sort of move things in a very precise fashion in either the top, the front, and the side while viewing the sculpt in the perspective view, so we can sort of see how things are looking in 3D. So that's sort of, we have these 4 views. Okay. Now, if I click the one below it, okay, so I go down here, this gives me a split view. So it gives me two views. Okay. And this is kind of nice if, you know, say you're, I usually don't use these views, these two views, but it is kind of nice if, you know, you have a, maybe a camera view in this one, and then you can put the perspective view here, so you can move things around in this viewport, and then view it through the camera. That might be a nice way to go. Okay. Then if I click this guy here, what this does is it shows my outliner. Okay. So my outliner, an outliner is essentially a list of all of my objects in my scene. So, I mean, I can be working in my perspective view and, you know, moving things around, and, you know, I can see all the objects in my scene, all the DAG objects in my scene. Okay. So this is really, really important to have your outliner. But I don't usually use this. I use a little bit of a different method, which is a torn off panel of the outliner, and I'll keep my viewport maximized like this, and I'll have a torn off sort of view of my outliner on the side. So that's a little overview of these panel layout buttons that you can switch between. So if we move down, we can see that we have Maya's timeline. Okay, so this is the timeline for animation, and you can see the time slider here. I can click this, and you can see that, you know, if I create an object here, I have a cube. So I have a cube. Here's frame 1, and I'll set a key. I'll set a key here, and I'll set a key here. And you can see I can scrub between those two keys. Okay, so I can animate stuff. Okay, very simply. And below that, I can set frame ranges down here. So I can set my frame range here to 50. Okay, so that means I'm going to start at 50. I can set my frame range up here to, right now it's set to 120. I can set this to 200. Okay. So that's my frame range that I can set. And I've also got this handy button, or handy little bar, and what this does is it allows me to sort of hone in on the animation that I'm working on. So if I have a section of animation that I want to really focus in on, I can sort of take this slider and I can say, well, my last keyframe is on frame 69, so I can put that to 69. And I can put this to 1, which is on right now. Okay. And I can enter the value again. I can enter that value here. So 50 and 69, so on and so forth. So it really allows me to just sort of hone in on some animation that I'm doing. And I can sort of break up my scenes that way. Okay. So below that, we have the Mel command line. Now this is a sort of abbreviated version of the script editor. I can enter commands in here whenever I want. So, you know, if I'm doing some Python scripting or Mel scripting, I can enter my Mel commands here, or call up procedures that Maya will recognize, and so on and so forth. But that's if you're like a rigger. And over beside the Mel command line, this is the you can call it the Mel command bar, the command response. So, you know, if I type something in here and I hit enter, well, this is gobbledygook. Okay, this is just full of syntax errors, and what it's giving me is an error. So it's telling me cannot find procedure any. Okay, so Maya's going to talk to me. Okay, that's what that's going to do. Okay, so if I enter something that's wrong, it'll tell me, and that's especially important if you're a rigger. Okay. Now some things I'm not going to show you because we really don't need to learn those for this course. There's a multitude of things that we could go into with this software, but we won't. So I'm going to show you what you need to know for this course. We're going to do an overview. So I'm going to come over here. The next thing I want to show you that's going to be important to you is the attribute editor and the channel box editor. So that's over here. So I have this cube here, and I can see that this cube has a bunch of transform information. So again, transforms are scales, scaling, rotations, and translates. So translates means movements. But essentially, being in the channel box editor here, what this shows me is all of the object's attributes. Okay, so that's everything from color information to shape node information. So the polycube creation, the default creation information, so the width, the height, the depth, the subdivisions. Okay, and it shows me the translation information, the transform information, which is where it is in space, how it's rotated, and how big it is or small it is. Okay, and it also gives me visibility. Okay, so that's what this shows me in the channel box editor, and that's what this is here. Okay, and if I move below the channel box editor, I have, so I'm just going to click anywhere on the screen to deselect that cube. I have what's called, I have the display layers and the animation layers here. Okay, so this is really handy for you guys, especially when you're modeling. We're not going to touch on the animation stuff because this is not an animation class. But for the display layers, this is really neat because we can put things on layers, and it's very so that we can view them, turn them off. We can turn off and on the visibility. Okay, so if I grab this cube and I come over to this little button here, I can say create a new layer and assign a selected object. So I have that selected object. So I'm going to assign that selected object to that layer by clicking that. And I can rename this. So I can call this cube disp1, so cube display 1. I can hit save. And now that that's on that layer, I can hide it, okay, by hitting the little V here. And over here we have on the right hand side we have this button here. So T means template, R means reference, and if it's blank it just means you can select it. So the difference between template and reference is reference, you can see the surface. Template just sort of makes it this ghosted. So if I turn off my grid, you can see if there's this sort of ghosted cube at the bottom. Okay. Again, if I turn it to reference, I can't select it as well, but I can see the surface. Okay. So this is good when we need to use it, again, kind of self-explanatory, as a reference. So if we're modeling to this cube and we need to use the cube as maybe a measurement object, we can do that. Okay. So that's just some of the things that you can do with the display layers. And if I have a bunch of layers in here, so I just added some empty layers, I can use these two buttons to sort of rearrange my layers. So this is taking the selected layer and moving it up, and this is taking the selected layer and moving it down. Okay. So again, while we're modeling, it's going to be a useful tool for you. So just remember that. Okay. So the other thing I want to touch on is we talked a little bit about the channel box editor here. Okay. Sorry, I'm having a sip of my coffee. You guys might be drinking a lot of coffee in this course. I'm just warning you. Okay. Just warning you. You guys and gals and guys. I love coffee. It's good stuff. I drink too much of it. Okay. So with the channel box editor, we discussed transform information, and we discussed the inputs. So the inputs are here. We are essentially viewing history on an object. Okay, so the inputs. So what does inputs mean? Well, the inputs tells me what I've done to the object. Okay, so this is the object's uh, history, okay, or construction history. Um, so under Polycube, that means this is the default Polycube creation attributes. Okay, so when I created the cube, it created it at a width of 1, a height of 1, depth of 1, and 1 sub-d for width, height, and depth as well. Okay, so it's showing me the creation attributes, okay, the default creation attributes. But then I added the cube to a display layer, so it's also showing me that. Okay, and there's that display node. Okay, and if I click it, I can't edit thing in the cube display layer. I can only see that this was added. Okay, this was something that was done to the cube. So this shows me, you know, this shows me essentially, you know, where the cube's been, who it got drunk with last night, you know, who it partied with, who it sang songs with, what it ate for breakfast. Okay, fun stuff. So now, there's also something called the attribute editor. Okay, so with the cube selected, I can say Control A, and it brings up the attribute editor. So the attribute editor shows me the Polycube's transform attributes, the limit information, the display information. Okay, so there's lots of things I can change with display. I can, under display, I can come in and I can say drawing overrides. Okay, and I can actually change the cube's color, the wireframe color. So if I change the cube's wireframe color to another color, it's locked or disconnected. Well, I should be able to change that. I'm not sure why it's not letting me. I say enable overrides. It's locked for some reason. I'll figure out why it's locked. That's not a usual thing. But I can actually change loads of stuff in here. I can come up to the shape node if I wanted to. And the shape node gives me a bunch of different things. So say I wanted to view the centers of the cube. Okay, so centers is the faces. I can display the triangles. I can even display the UVs. Okay. So the attribute editor allows me to edit the attributes of the cube. So the attributes are the cube's making. So what makes up the cube? Okay, so everything from color information, shading information, whether or not the cube renders, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the course. Okay, so the attribute editor. Okay, let's just remember that. All right. Okay. So now next, we're going to talk a little bit about hotkeys. Okay, so that's going to be in the next video. But right now, we've done a really good job of just taking a first look at Maya and the main tools that I want you to look at. We'll get more in depth with some other things, but for now we're just going to leave it at that. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at some hotkeys, and we're also going to go into some of the buttons in the window viewports here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those so that you have a better understanding of that, because there's some stuff in here that you are going to want to know. That's going to help you model and help you in this course. Okay, so that's for the next video. Until then, I'll see you next time.